For this tutorial you will need your selected yarn. I'm using Stylecraft Special Chunky. You will need a 6mm crochet hook if you're using the Special Chunky, but obviously use the correct size crochet hook for your yarn. I would suggest a chunky or thicker yarn for this particular project. You will need a pair of scissors and a darning needle to sew in your ends. You want to begin by creating your slip knots, and you can do this whichever way you prefer. And we're going to start off by chaining 10. So insert your hook and you're going to yarn over, pull through for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. So that is going to count as our first 10 chains, and this is going to be the very center of the bottom of the basket. So if I just grab this basket here, you can see that there is a line straight down the middle, and then all of our stitches are working around this line. So this original chain is going to class as this very first line just here. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to chain 3. So I'm just going to keep my finger just on this very last chain, just so we know that's our chain 10, and I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And this is going to class as a treble crochet. So that is treble crochet in the UK, and that is known as a double crochet in the US. And in this chain here, where we've just pinched with our finger, we're actually going to do another 6 treble crochets. So we're going to yarn over and insert the hook into that chain, grab the yarn and pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. So that's 1, yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's 2. 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's your 6 trebles right into that very end. And what I want you to think about this is like your rainbow. So this chain 3 here and this treble just here is actually part of the straight bit of this base, and the other 5 are part of the curved bit of the base. So now we're actually going to work along our chain, and we're going to do 1 treble into each chain, just working on the front loop. So yarn over and insert. So when you insert into the loop or into the chain, you only have 1 loop. Grab the yarn, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So as I say, you're going to do treble crochet all along this edge. So pause the video, work your way to the end of the chain and come back to me when you're ready. So at this point, this is what your work should be looking like. We have our flat edge here and our curve, which is going to be at either end of the base of the work. So now that we've just done this flat edge, we're actually going to repeat what we've done here. So it's almost, so it is symmetrical. So this is classing as our first treble, and we're going to do 6 more trebles into this end chain. So I'm just going to press this loose end just down so that we can crochet around it, and then we're going to do our 6 trebles into the end of this last chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now when we pull them round, we have the first treble which was in that space. We then have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 which goes around the edge, and then the last one which is counting as the flat edge just here. So now, just to make sure that you are along the right track, you should have actually 8 empty chains along this row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So you want to go ahead and do a treble into each of those chains along this side. So pause the video, work your way along and meet me back once you're at the end. So this is what your work should be looking like, and you can see that we have a separation here. So all we're going to do is count to our 3rd chain from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, and then slip stitch into that chain 3. And that completes your first round. To start the second round, you're going to chain 3, and again that is going to class as your first treble. And now obviously we're going to have to increase our stitches so this remains flat. So if you just pull this stitch to one side, you can see actually the top of that same stitch just here. You are going to do another treble into that very same stitch. So you have 2 stitches going into 1 stitch, and you're going to do this for the next 6 stitches. So again, into the next one, we work into the top of the stitch and do 1 and 2 trebles. So we now have 5 stitches remaining. 1, 2 trebles into the same stitch. Pause the video and work your last remaining 4 stitches. So this is what the end of the work should be looking like, and we're going to turn it on its side. And as I said before, along this edge you're going to have 8 stitches, and that's going to be the same throughout the base of the work. You're only going to increase when you are working around the curve. So you want to go ahead and do 1 treble crochet into the next 8 stitches along this side. So pause the video and meet me back in a moment. So this is what your work will be looking like now. And on this side we're going to do, or on this curve we're going to do exactly the same thing as before. So into the next stitch you're going to do 2 treble crochets, 1 and 2, and then the same into the next one, 1 and 2. So what you've done here is done 2 stitches into 1 stitch, 2 stitches into 1 stitch, and you're going to do exactly the same thing into the next 5 stitches. So pause the video, work 2 stitches into the next 5 stitches and meet me back once you've done. So now at this point you are left with 8 stitches, and you're going to go ahead and do 1 treble into the top of each of these stitches. So pause the video and meet me back once you've done those 8 trebles. So once you've done those stitches, you're again going to connect the first stitch to the last stitch by slip stitching into the 3rd chain from the bottom. We're then going to chain 3 again, 1, 2 and 3, and this row is going to be slightly different. So we've just done our chain 3 here, and what we're going to do is do 2 trebles into the next stitch, 1 and 2, and a treble into the next stitch, and then 2 trebles into the next stitch, and 1 treble into the next stitch. Again, 2 trebles into the next stitch, and 1 treble into the next stitch. So just to recap, we did a chain 3, 2 trebles in 1 stitch, and then 1 treble, 2 trebles in the next stitch, 1 treble, 2 trebles in the next stitch, and 1 treble. You're going to repeat that a further 3 times and meet me back further round. So 2 trebles, 1 treble, 2 treble, 1 treble, 2 treble, 1 treble. So once you've got to this point, you should have 19 stitches all the way around, including this chain 3. And you can just see that that doesn't take us quite down to the same stitch as what we started. So what you're going to do is do a treble crochet or one treble crochet into the next stitch, and then that brings us along our edge again. So you're going to do one treble crochet into the next 8 stitches and meet me back. So now once we've got to this point, we're actually going to repeat what we did before. So we're going to do our first treble, and this is like the chain 3 that we did to begin with, and then we're going to do 2 trebles into the next stitch, and then 1 treble into the next stitch. So that's 4 stitches that we've just done so far. You're going to repeat 2 trebles, 1 treble, 2 trebles, 1 treble until you hit 19 stitches. So pause the video and meet me back once you've worked your way around this curve. So I've just worked my 19 stitches, and then what I'm going to do is do one last treble to make 20 stitches, which goes around that curve. And then I'm going to do 1 treble into the remaining 8 stitches along this side and join with a slip stitch. So pause the video, do that, and then meet me back. So at this point you have successfully done the base of your basket, and if you count around the edge you will have 56 trebles in total. So what we're actually going to do now is start working our way up, so we're actually forming the sides of the basket. And what you want to do is begin by chaining 2, and from now on your rows are going to consist of those 52 stitches. So what you're going to do for the edges of your, or the sides of your basket, is a half treble crochet, so that's half double in the US, and this just makes it a slightly shorter stitch, a little bit more dense, so that your basket is a little bit more sturdy. Now obviously if you're using something like this special DK Chunky, your basket's not going to be firm and rigid, but obviously once things are in there they will be, it will be a bit more supported. So I've just done my chain 2, and then I'm going to go ahead in the top of the next stitch and do a half treble. So it's yarn over, insert your hook into the top of the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, you'll have 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through, all 3 loops on the hook. And then again, 1 into the next stitch, 1 into the next stitch, and then 1 into each and every stitch around this row. And what you'll find is because you are not increasing, it makes a curve, or it makes these stitches stand up, which is exactly what we want. So go ahead and do 1 half treble into every stitch around this row. As I say, you should have 56 stitches in total, and meet me back once you're at this last stitch and I shall show you how to connect and move on to your next row. So now once I've done this section, you can see it's starting to form a bowl. So just from this last stitch to the first stitch, I'm going to insert my hook into the top of this stitch, the second chain from the bottom, and just slip stitch. I'm then going to chain 2 again, 1, 2, and then do exactly the same thing all the way around. So I'm going to do 1 half treble into each of the stitches, and that will be 56 stitches all the way around. And I'm going to do this for a total of 13 rows. So this is my first row, second, and then I'm going to continue all the way to 13 rows. So pause the video, work those 13 rows. Obviously if you want your basket to be a bit taller, then you can go ahead and do some more, but work those rows and then meet me back and I'll show you how to finish off your basket. So my basket is definitely working its way up now. I've just done 13 rows and I have joined the last row. And just for your very last row, so after you've done your 13 rows of half treble, you're actually just going to do a chain 1 and then do a double crochet into every stitch around. So rather than going into the top loop like this, I'm actually going to go in between the stitch, just like this, just to kind of tidy it up a little bit more. So your double crochet would be your single crochet in the US. So go ahead and do your double crochet all the way around in between the stitches and meet me back just in a moment. So once you've worked your way around, you're going to do your slip stitch into the very first stitch of that round. You're then going to chain 1, grab your scissors and snip off your yarn. You can then pull that yarn out and pull nice and tight. You then want to take your darning needle, thread up your needle, and then you're going to weave this back and forth into the work just to disguise that end. So weave it in and then weave it back. And then I'm just going to cut off that very last bit just here. And then this little bit poking out at the bottom. Then all that's left to do is just fold down the top as much or as little as you want. I mean, you don't even have to fold it down if you don't want to. If you wanted to, you could use your yarn and just stitch around the edge just to keep it into shape, but I like it unpinned so that you can do what you want with the basket. But this is what it's looking like. You can see in the middle there and then underneath. So that is the basket. It's really quite simple to do and easy to make. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to keep up to date with any of my latest videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you again next time. Bye!